This is the Open University.
Oh, won't you something oranges, my something oranges, my something oranges. Oh, won't you something I forget.
Hello, whoever you are. Today I want to pose a question. What if you forgot everything you know and you quite enjoyed it? Or what if you went somewhere completely foreign and found that you felt completely at home? That would suggest you were alienated in the first place. Forgetting things and free associating, maybe sort of daydreaming, might be better than working. It might be better than having something to say. Perhaps the free play of the mind is what justifies everything. These are the thoughts I have here on the red beach. I call this the beach because it's got a sort of comfortable beach chair. It's in the Yangon Book Plaza up on the 5th floor. It's part of the cafe, but it's also used for events. You can see that they have conferences, poetry readings and things like that up here on this stage. The only one I've actually witnessed was a bunch of children singing songs with vastly too much amplification, which made it slightly less pleasant. But I'm here quite early in the morning, and so there's nobody around really. The market downstairs is busy already, but up here it's still quite quiet. And I'm thinking about the sights and sounds of Yangon because it's my last week here. I'll actually fly on the 20th to Kuala Lumpur and have a couple of weeks there before heading back to Japan. So I did actually cut short this visit because I was potentially going to stay until the 1st of April, so 2 whole months here. I could have done that happily because I feel very comfortable here. I'm in my comfort zone and I'm completely outside my comfort zone at the same time, and they are one and the same. I'm looking a bit like Cesare Pavese on this beach, so I don't know what that means. Pavese committed suicide after an unhappy relationship with an American actress called Constance Dowling, and I'm not feeling suicidal or desperate in that way. I'm just feeling very relaxed, actually. It reminds me that I kind of made a resolution when I was 18. I felt kind of stressed in Edinburgh as a young 18-year-old, and I went to the doctors to have my heart looked at, to have an ECG, and the doctor said, there's nothing wrong with you, go forth rejoicing, your heart is absolutely fine, you're probably just a bit nervous. And of course he didn't prescribe anything, there was nothing wrong with me, so I went to a herbal medicinal chemist's and I got some anti-stress tablets which were purely herbal, and took those as a kind of placebo, and that was fine, but what I realized I had to do in my life was not get stressed, because I think I have the kind of quite anxious personality that would be responding quite badly to any kind of stress. It would just go straight to my heart. So I decided to have a kind of stress-free life, and that involved, at the time, there was a lot of talk of unemployment, mass unemployment in Britain, and I thought, well, I volunteer. If everybody's going to have to be unemployed, or 3 million people are going to have to be unemployed, I can be one of them, and I can be writing in my spare time. And that's essentially how I've lived ever since. I've never had a proper job. I've had the odd temporary job selling books or whatever, but or writing journalism, or, freelance work, but I haven't actually ever had a regular job. And I don't know, stringing leisure out too long can be a little bit stressful in itself. I've actually got good news this week, which is that the storage unit in Berlin, which I was told was going to have to close unexpectedly at the end of May. It was going to have to bring me home from Asia during May sometime to get my boxes out before they closed the building. I've been told it's had a sort of extension of a couple of months, so I can do that in August, July or August. So basically I've got 3 months in Japan. Japan really is my comfort zone. It is a familiar place to me, but Yangon is becoming so, and it's quite changed my perspective on Japan in the sense that the kinds of things I like to get up to in Japan, like go and hunt for second-hand clothes and paperbacks and things, I can do even better here, at least for the paperbacks. I'll qualify that, because second-hand clothes I've seen almost none. There is a kind of market up at the top of, near the book forum actually, the book plaza, basically just people with blankets on the street. I think that this area of town, the top end of Chinatown, is an area where peasants, since we had Peasants' Day, a holiday, a couple of weeks ago, to celebrate the 70% of Burmese people who are still essentially peasant farmers living off the land. So I think it is okay to use that word here. It's not stigmatized, it's just a realistic description of what people do. They're subsistence farmers. And so I think peasants come in their vans. They have these distinctive pickup trucks with kind of covering and rail and some very hard benches. I think they get up really early in the morning, maybe 3:30 or 4 in the morning, and they drive into the city from quite far up in the hills, and they sell their wares, vegetables, clothes, whatever it is they have, on the ground, literally on the street, with no license and no legality. And I think that's the only second-hand clothes you might see. You see occasional old pairs of shoes and belts and, kind of cell phones and things like that, but there isn't really a second-hand area per se. I did find a second-hand area, after saying that maybe Hanoi didn't have anything like that either. I did find an area which specialised in second-hand clothes, just south of Dongda, the Dongda district. But nothing particularly spectacular. I think I was more impressed by the tiled floors than I was by the options for clothes there. Everybody buys new clothes because new clothes are so cheap. And for instance, I bought this shirt I'm wearing today, this morning, right before putting it on for this video, for 3,000 kat, and that's basically 180 euro cents, €1.80, which is what most shirts here cost, about 2,000 or 3,000. So I found this amazing new place, including a cafe called the Cafe Virus, which uses the same typography as Branson's Virgin Company, in a big market area, which also includes some bookstalls. I don't know how they survive these bookstores. They're really dusty, musty, and unvisited, at least while I was there. Somebody was in there actually having an English lesson from one of the old men running the bookstall, but not buying any books. But I found some really interesting things there, including a huge book by Thomas Wolfe called Of Time and the River. Thomas Wolfe, largely forgotten American author who really desperately wanted to be a great writer with a capital G and a capital W, and who apparently inspired Jack Kerouac. And you can see it really in this gushing romantic style that he had, which really shows the degree to which the Beats in the 50s were kind of a rerun, an American rerun, a modern rerun of the romantic poets and writers we had in the 19th century in Britain. But Thomas Wolfe is kind of slightly annoyingly prolix, verbose aesthete. I skipped 750 pages and went straight to his Paris diary, which is a bit more direct and raw. And that's sort of enjoyable, but he's just sort of intense in a slightly irritating way. And I suppose, makes you think that it's been quite just, the fact that he was forgotten. My favourite French authors, I suppose he would compare perhaps with André Gide, a little bit the Fruits of the Earth, André Gide. Speaking of fruits, I found a Nathalie Sarraute novel called Les Fruits d'Or, the Golden Fruits, in another bookshop, a place called New Vision. I've got to the stage now where I'm going to the same cafes and the same second-hand bookshops every day, so that's a good time to book your flight out, I think, when you just groundhogging it. You're just repeating things. But what I'm doing now on my third, fourth, fifth visits to these places is I'll actually look behind. There'll be stacks of books, and I'll sort of actually make a point of moving them to see what's behind them. And there is the odd interesting title behind the titles that I've actually looked at before. But Kuala Lumpur will be a very different experience, I think. I'm being guided round by somebody who's kindly taken time off work to show me the city, and so my next video letter will be from there. But I'll be very sad to leave this city, because I felt very comfortable here, and also the question of the event second. I think it has so many fantastic events per second. It's really eclipsed Hanoi and Vientiane, the two cities I was in before. And so this will have been a 4-city tour, a sort of a grand tour in the old 18th century style, which would have taken in France and Italy. Now, I guess it's a Southeast Asian grand tour. And it's been good for me to have cities where there aren't really significant museums, where they're communist countries on the whole, or military dictatorships, politically very different, culturally very different from what I'm used to. I'm used to sort of Asian extensions of the West, essentially. Cities like Seoul and Tokyo they have everything the West has, and Western people can walk around in a kind of bubble. And I think you can't do that here. There is, I think, a certain kind of enchantment on the streets of Yangon, which I mean in the purely technical sense of enchantment, which Max Weber, for instance, used. The idea that there was a time in which men and gods kind of walked side by side through their cities. The Greeks had that. They had a kind of modern city in the form of Athens, but they also had this belief in these very storied gods. And here you have that with the multiple religions which exist side by side here. You have Hindu deities, temples, trees which are sacred, which have little shrines built into them, and all sorts of sacred artifacts, a bit like Shinto artifacts made of straw hanging from buildings. You have this coexistence of the modern, cell phone shops and things, computer shops, airline offices, with a kind of pre-modern enchanted state. And I sometimes think to myself as I'm walking around here, the people look so happy. They look very happy. They're often singing to themselves, smiling, laughing, giggling, wearing these very bright colours, very optimistic looking outfits. And I think to myself, this happiness is a result partly of the exact stage they're in, between enchantment and modernity, or between underdevelopment and development, or between poverty and wealth. You have an economic growth rate here of about between 7 and 10% a year. That is the kind of growth rate which ensures that parents are absolutely assured of the fact that their children will have a materially better life than they will have. So what they tend to do is they extrapolate from that. All the best things from the past are going to stay around, and all the best things in the future are going to arrive. So there's a sense of plus, everything multiplied, rather than anything being subtracted or lost. And I think that's an illusion, because I think they will lose a great deal of the present enchantment that they have. And that's very sad, and it's something that someone should shake them by the shoulders and tell them, for God's sake, don't, it's a bit like that China Girl song Iggy and Bowie wrote, I'll give you television, I'll give you eyes of blue, I'll give you a man who wants to rule the world. It's not as if we haven't been giving them these things for centuries. I mean, Britain was administering Burma a century ago, but it's a continuous loss, and things like the plastic pollution, which is destroying a lot of the countryside now in Burma, are examples of what can be lost. Your natural habitat can be lost for a start. A lot of your species of wildlife and fish, things destroyed by modernity, pollution destroying things, biodiversity suffers, but also human happiness is going to suffer. And I think tourism is also obviously going to boom here, and I'm obviously part of the problem in that sense, not just that I'm a tourist, but that I'm sort of promoting this as an amazing place to come to, and even to be based in if you're, heaven forbid, a digital nomad of some kind, because you can now, just very recently in the last couple of years, you can do that. You have the internet speeds, you have the ATMs. To come and squat here like some horrible, malevolent spectre of modernity over their wonderful traditional culture. Of course, it's easy to look with starry eyes. I saw a film, actually, a Burmese film, a comedy, in a cinema. I made a point of doing that. I almost never go to cinemas in any other country, but I wanted to see what it was like here. And it was a comedy set in a village with a headman and a sort of men's house and a women's house, very traditional Southeast Asian lifestyle. And yet it was obviously also set in the present. You didn't see any cars or motorbikes or roads or anything like that. It was just this village as a kind of fait accompli. And then there was a man who arrived with a digital watch, and that was the only piece of digital equipment they had. Nobody had computers or iPhones or even telephones. It was just this traditional village, and then this guy who happened to have a digital watch. And the only other element of modernity I could recognize in the film was some plastic pollution down by the riverbank. There were a lot of plastic bags and things lying around. So they couldn't exclude those, or they just thought, well, it would look a bit unnatural if we picked these up, took them out of the picture. So there were these two things, a sort of digital watch and some plastic bags. They're aware of the plastic pollution problem. They have some government measures, like special encouragement not to use plastic bags and things like that. But it is particularly bad throughout Southeast Asia. It's something I've become extremely aware of here, that it's particularly toxic. And so I kind of want to tell them, listen, not everything great in modernity is going to help you, it's going to take you anywhere good, so maybe don't adopt everything. But it's almost impossible, once things are invented and once other people have them, it's almost impossible not to crave them, to get into that development cycle where you start living on credit and you start taking out debts in order to have the lifestyle that you think you ought to have. I sometimes fantasize about being rich myself, and I realize that being rich simply brings a whole new set of problems. It simply amplifies the kinds of logistical problems that you have when you're poor. I think a small amount of money actually solves your problems, and then anything above that brings a whole new set of even larger scaled problems with it. But I think about being rich, not that I am rich, I possibly have some prospect of being rich at some point in the future. And there isn't really anything I want. I think I've cured myself of wanting. I don't have this belief that the people here seem to have, which is that material prosperity is beneficial automatically. But the one thing I would like is maybe to have a house in Japan, but I'm not even sure about that. To build an architect type house in Japan would be fun. But I think that would obviously bring all the logistical problems that you see in these home-built programs on television. And it would also be kind of pointless, because I would sit there, working on a laptop, just as I do now, wherever I am. And I think I really enjoy this kind of flux, this nomadism of moving from one place to another. And I think I enjoy that as a lifestyle, of the temp's vacillation's gone permanent, as I once put it in a song. I think I want that temporariness to be a kind of permanence in and of itself. And so in a sense, the answer to the question I set myself earlier this year, which was, could I take the travelling parts of my year and make those the whole year? I think it's a qualified yes. I think I would like to have a base somewhere, and it looks like that's going to be Berlin from July. But just as a place to store my books, But that could be a storage unit. That could continue to be a storage unit. And I think if I were rich, I'd probably just want to move from hotel to hotel, and not really be based anywhere. So I wouldn't I wouldn't be materially rich, I'd be experientially rich. I think that's a good note to end on.
Open University.